At the beginning of the 20th century, Milan was a city undergoing rapid economic and industrial expansion. The railway lines were laid out and extended. The sewage system was wholly redesigned. The residential districts and schools populated the area more densely, and the trams took the place of the horse-drawn vehicles. The glamorous new world of the megalopolis ran on electricity. As far back as 1883, the first electrical power station in continental Europe had started up at Santa Radegonda, just round the corner from the Duomo of Milan. The 25-year-old Antoni Sant'Elia moved into Via San Raffaele, right next to the power station, in 1913, after periods of training at the municipal town planning office, and with a number of architects' firms in the city. Working out his ideas for the Milan of the future, Sant'Elia's attention was particularly drawn to the sites of the electrical power stations, as well as to hydroelectric power plants, being built over a large part of the Lombardy region. Special interest was reserved for those of the Valley of Valtellina, with the power stations of Grosotto in Valtellina and in Trezzo d'Adda standing out in particular. The buildings that housed these processes had all the appearance of baronial residences. Sant'Elia dedicated much thought to the idea of the power station as a structure whose function was instantly recognizable, freed from features designed to mask their purpose. The power stations showed off their structure fearlessly, exposing their internal workings with generators and turbines and with cables stretching in every direction, while the hydroelectric power stations displayed their great pipelines that conveyed masses of water under pressure. His perception of the inherent need in power station design to render explicit the function of the architecture with no heavy external adornment was crucial to the rapid cultural development of the young architect from Como. He attended courses at the Brera Academy, studied the town planning methods of the Secession, and in particular applied the compositional models of the Otto Wagner School. His free-flowing, busy-handed sketches on sheets and bits of paper interpreted the figurative images of the secessionist period repertoire in simplified forms that were quite radical at the time. The columns and pilasters, pediments and domes, buttresses and arches all disavow easy comparison with the past, to become parts of a plastic mechanism without destination, pure volumes and contours of indefinite and monumental complexes. One of these untitled monuments was chosen, at the suggestion of Marinetti, by the city of Como in 1930 as a template for a majestic monument to the fallen, which went on to be built in rationalist key by Attilio and Giuseppe Terragni. In honing his idea for urban renewal, Sant'Elia proceeded piece by piece, component by component, to build a huge jigsaw puzzle, paying first attention to how the pieces join together, and then to the linking in of roads and buildings. His clear intent was to facilitate the fast movement of people from one place to another, making use of the most rapid possible mechanical means. Sketched drafts worked and reworked structural characteristics with a proliferation of bridges, gangways, rails, and moving staircases, as well as galleries, towers, platforms, and canopied structures where bricks and stone were replaced by more ductile materials like reinforced concrete, steel, and glass. The juxtaposition of the details with the reality of the structures rendered them more credible and fit for purpose. The process can be appreciated in drawings that pick up on the structure of hangars and aerostat workshops in Crescenzago, in the countryside close to Milan. Here, in 1913, the engineer Enrico Forlanini built the dirigible known as F2 Città di Milano, which was no less than 72 meters in length, and which he himself flew on its inaugural flight over the Duomo of Milan. In 1909, the Milanese Mario Stroppa, alias Marius, produced an imaginative panoramic drawing of his ambitious vision of a residential district sketching from Sesto San Giovanni to Milan, comprising also factories, workers' housing and services. Sant'Elia's Città Nuova was exhibited in 2 fairs in 1914 and radicalized the proportions of the city to make it both a larger and more interconnected metropolis. It would be a macro environment for the masses, with a population similar to that of skyscraping New York. His metaphors of a possible future were underscored by oblique perspectives and views from below that accentuated the towering masses above, the teeming of vehicles on roads that intersected each other at different levels, by pedestrian ways separated from motor traffic, with people conveyed on moving pavements, and by housing on terraced steps, each dwelling individually accessed by exposed lifts. Lights shone from windows in every direction in a symphony accompanied by neon advertising and lanterns glowing at the tops of great towers. Embracing Marinetti's movement, Sant'Elia wrote the Manifesto of Futurist Architecture in June 1914, praising the revolutionary impetus of this urban polygenesis. We must invent and rebuild the futurist city like an immense and tumultuous shipyard, agile, mobile and dynamic in every detail. And the futurist house must be like a gigantic machine. The lifts must no longer be hidden away like tapeworms in the niches of stairwells. The stairwells themselves, rendered useless, must be abolished, and the lifts must scale the length of the facades like serpents of steel and glass. From the robust railway station in secessionist style, more suited to the Vienna of Otto Wagner than to Milan of the early years of the 20th century, in 1912 Sant'Elia took a leap forward to design a much more complicated multimedia station for his Città Nuova. As hub for the urban passenger transport, the station could be reached from the air, with passengers landing on small platforms suitable for today's helicopters but unlikely landing strips for the canvas flying machines of the time's aeronautical pioneers. Passengers would then be transported by funicular railways to the tracks below, upon which stood the buzzing carriages driven by an omnipotent and ceaseless electrical power, in a scenario entirely prefiguring modernity. The great storm of the Great War blew away dreams, plans, and much prophetic enthusiasm. Antoni Sant'Elia spent the few months that stood between him and the call to arms accepting appointments to work on projects, especially in the city of Como. Some of his designs still exemplify secessionist styles, while others, such as his submission for the competition for the Church of Salso Maggiore, appear as monumental edifices whose final destination was not immediately apparent, whether a celebratory structure or place of worship. The architect enlisted in 1915 in the Volunteer Cyclist Battalion, along with a group of futurists, as can be seen in the portrait by the painter Anselmo Bucci. He first saw combat at Dosso Casina, and then at the Carso. He spoke to his comrades often and with undiminished fervor of his Città Nuova, but was only to actually draft the war cemetery of the Brigata Arezzo in which he fought. Destiny decreed that he would himself to be the first buried there, after he took a machine gun bullet in the head, during an assault on enemy lines. The painter Mario Bazzi depicted his lifeless body in the trench, with grieving soldier comrades standing over him.